Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Elizabeth, registered therapeutic counselor and ADHD coach. I'm reaching out to the world to help educate them as to really what the reality is with ADHD, how much it affects people in the different aspects of their life, and how we can work with it. So today, Andy Jones is my guest. He is an amazing man. He has a great service that is so passionate on his heart. It's such an honor and a blessing for me to have him here. Andy works with men doing coaching. They have children and they're basically lost access to their children because of accusations towards them, unfair judgment, and Andy knows this firsthand from the challenges that he's been through with multiple relationships, having so many beautiful children. Some he can see, some he's not allowed to see, and just the games that people play, which is really sad and unfair. So, Andy, thank you so much for this beautiful gift that you're giving the world, that you're helping men that are going through the challenges that you've been through, the struggles with the court system, the struggles trying to see your children, an ex-spouse, partner, brainwashing the kids, and just how painful the whole thing is. And it's so beautiful that you don't want others to go through that. So can you share just a little bit about your journey with us?
Yeah, absolutely, Elizabeth, and thank you very much for having me here. Really appreciate it. Now, as I have 9 children altogether. I've been married twice. I've got 5 children from one marriage and 3 from another. Been divorced twice as well, and now have a lovely new partner. I say new 5 years now, but a lovely partner. Spent an entire 8 years or so going through the family courts in the UK with both ex-wife 1 and 2, to maintain access with my children, to be able to be a dad and have a relationship with them. Now, along that way, I have learned a lot of stuff. Have been a lot of struggles. The first time round was only 20 years ago now, and that was new to me then. I was a much younger man then. We reinvent ourselves as time goes on, I think, and had to raise 3 and then 4 of my older children as a single dad for a number of years, and then got remarried, had 3 more children, and the children are lovely children. They're 9, 10, and 12 now, and then that relationship went very bad, and it was quite an abusive relationship, quite a controlling relationship, lots of problems with my children, and I very much wanted to end that relationship peacefully. When it came to an end, I didn't end it. It was ended by my ex, but that's fine. Now I was broken at the time, but I managed to put myself back and get some strength back in me after a period of mourning, if you like. And then very much wanted to negotiate the time I spent with my daughters, our daughters, but my daughters from the second marriage, to just have a fair contact time and be able to be a dad and be able to do the normal things. And then that was blocked very soon and ended up back in the family court again, which is how we got to being where we are here, really. Very challenging times, still ongoing times with the family courts here. And I've been alienated against one of my daughters for the last 4 years now. I've barely seen her. In that time, she's got very hostile views towards me. And the same things are beginning to appear with my younger 2 children from that marriage as well now. So it's a considerable challenge, an ongoing challenge. How to be resilient enough, how to keep my spirits up, how to focus on the rest of life that's going on around that. And then how to support other men going through the same situation as well.
Yeah, that sounds really painful. I know as a mother, I love my son to bits. So I can only imagine how painful that is for you, that emotional struggle. And then that added challenge of having to go through the courts, the rigmarole, having to deal with lawyers, the additional fees, you're supporting your other children, trying to raise them on your own. And meanwhile, it's just like, wow, how do you balance all of this? I can't even imagine how difficult that would be, and how it would affect somebody's feelings of self-worth, the toxicity of a relationship. I know with women are more prone to speak up and say, hey, this is a toxic relationship. I've been subject to this kind of abuse, but men are more hesitant to speak up about it, and which is really a shame, because they are just as vulnerable and subject to abusive situations, whether it be physical, emotional, financial, all of these abusive things. They're still just as vulnerable, but society just has this really warped figure that no, all the women are the victims. Oh, well, what? Come on, come on, guys, like what? You're a pussy, pull up your socks, suck it up, which is nonsense. It's wrong. It's wrong. Men should be given that same right of respect and honor.
It's fascinating you say that, Elizabeth, because when my second marriage started going bad, I had 8 children living at home at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them had their own baby as well, and I didn't realize how bad my relationship was, and the fact that I was being abused. It sounds a very bizarre thing to say. I wasn't aware of it. I didn't think I was someone that could be abused. I didn't think I was being abused. And it wasn't until quite a bit later on I realized I was. But even then, people said, why didn't you get out of it then? And my answer is, I was a dad holding together 2 families, and had all my children together. And there is nowhere to go for men in the UK particularly, but I think it's the same in most of the world, that there are no refuges for men with children. There is literally nowhere to go. There is no support. I mean, in the UK, we have things like Women's Aid, we have various women's charities that offer active support and quite often support women in making false allegations. And obviously, there's a lot of people who do not. I'm not shying away from that. In the UK, the figure is something like 30% of men get abused and 70% of women do. Or 30% of the 30-70 of people are being abused, rather. But that's still 30% of men, in that bracket. And that's a lot of people. But of them, a very, very tiny fraction, does it ever go to court? Does it get brought up? Does it get believed? Does it ever get heard? And I think going into further what you said, that men themselves are frightened to talk about it. Men don't talk in the same way women do. We don't connect in the same way. We don't have that emotional bond with other men.
Right.
And I think, like you said about stop being a pussy and stuff like that, that is the underlying thing. It's like, man up, be tough. That's what people in my generation particularly grew up with, is that, sticks and stones will break your bones, names will never hurt you.
Yeah, which is so wrong.
It's absolutely not true. Words are very, very powerful things.
They can leave very deep scars. That's for sure. And I grew up in that same generation where I thought that when I heard, well, boys don't cry, I thought they were physically incapable of crying. My neighbor, when he would cry, I was like, oh, they can cry? They do have that ability? Yeah, it's for society to raise men to basically say, you need to be totally stoic. You're not allowed to have emotions. That's just so wrong. And then as a result of it, then, gee, is there any wonder why men have heart attacks sooner, why they're have higher stress levels, why they have shorter lifespans? Because society does not encourage them to own their emotions. Yeah.
Very powerful. That is very powerful. And I think it is improving. Was the younger generation is now. Now I see particularly young men in their late teens and early 20s seem to be much more communicative and have a much better ability to put forward their emotional distresses and emotional positive as well, for that matter.
Yeah.
But I think they're allowed to. There's a permission in their generation, in that culture, in our culture anyway, to within that generation to be able to share emotional challenges. And it certainly wasn't a thing when we were growing up, and certainly our parents of our generation, they were born in the Second World War.
Yes, exactly.
And they were born of Victorian parents or just post-Victorian parents, and therefore very old-fashioned values and ideals and stuff. So it's taken really 100 years of generations to begin to break away from this Victorian restriction on stiff upper lip, and particularly British English as well, of not crying, not showing emotions, not being, be seen to be weak. The man is the strong one. The man is the bearer of the responsibility. The man is the one that everyone goes to for their support. And to some extent, rightfully so, that there are some. I'm fairly traditional in some of my views on that. No, I think that a man should be able to be strong and supportive of his family, but should also have the freedom and permission to be weak and vulnerable sometimes. And to really be able to express themselves far better.
I like what you said there about being weak and vulnerable. However, the reality of it is the man that allows himself to be vulnerable is far from weak. They are far from weak. It takes a very strong man to allow themselves to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable means I am putting my heart and soul out there, and here it is in my hand, and you might crush it. So, that's a strong man. A strong man.
It's really interesting to say that, because I'm nearly 50 now. Now I have only just found myself in a relationship where I have the permission to be able to feel, to be able to express my feelings, to be able to be vulnerable. If you're in relationships with people that are either attacking you or not supportive of you, or are so high needing their own needs that they can't even begin to see your needs, let alone meet your needs, you don't have a chance of really being able to allow you vulnerable enough, because you have to survive. You have to be strong enough to survive.
Right.
That's the crux. We have to keep living, and we have to keep our children alive if we have children. And that is a strong motivator. You have to keep doing those things. And I don't know what it's like for women, but certainly for men, we suppress the inner emotions to be able to keep going, keep driving forward, keep supporting their family, keep supporting their wife. And that's obviously then neglecting our own needs to some extent. But that is again something for me, I've had to self-teach it and be in a position where I feel safe enough to be vulnerable with my partner, for example.
And not just with her, but also with your kids, with your friends, with other people. You also have another business as well, so being vulnerable with the people that you deal with and interact with every day. How many people can actually wrap their head around and grasp all the different levels and layers that are going on here? That you've raised several children, not just as a parent in a family unit, but also as a single parent, which also shows nurturing, support. And I think that's something else that a lot of men are afraid of, and especially in the ADHD realm, they're afraid of this label and of what is. And it is a biological, physical reality. It's not bad parenting. It's not an idea. It's not laziness, but it's actually real. And here you are bringing to the table all of these beautiful characteristics that are just a blessing that men need to hear. They need to hear this. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be nurturing. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to share them. And it's okay to trust me because I've been through it, and you're putting that out there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's really powerful. And I've really had to train myself that it's okay for me to be vulnerable, even with people I don't know sometimes. So I put some very personal posts on the internet, on Facebook, for example, on my Facebook pages. You've probably seen some of them.
Yeah.
In our group we have online that we share together, on the Team 18. And I think I have deliberately gone out of my way to be vulnerable. It's only over the last year, and show my vulnerabilities to other people. Prior to the last 12 months, not even quite 12 months yet, but prior to that, I kept my feelings away from the internet. I kept my personal stuff away from the internet, away from people I didn't know, away from people that were not directly involved in my life, sort of thing. But what I found is, by going out and by being authentically vulnerable, I think that's where it comes in. You have to be authentically vulnerable. I think there's a lot of fakers out there that are attention seekers and do damage to the cause, if you like, because there's kind of over-egg it. But I think there's also, a lot of people are doing a lot of good stuff, and there's some good guys online now.
Yeah.
Really pushing this forward. I follow a guy called Richard Gannon on YouTube, rather, and he's really big into supporting sort of narcissistic abuse and stuff like that with men. There are now the internet has been a godsend for allowing men to connect in ways that probably weren't possible before, and also allowing us to be privately vulnerable publicly, if that makes sense. So by privately vulnerable in a relatively contained group of people, and I think particularly when you're going through breakups and divorces and stuff, there's a lot of high emotions. There are a lot of things going around, but even when children are involved, it's even higher again. And again, when false allegations are involved, that elevates further. And it's really important for anyone, I say men, I'm talking about men, it's my area of knowledge and expertise, to be able to connect and get genuine support. And it's really tricky to find groups, well, it's not tricky, but there are very few groups, put it this way, that offer good support for both men and for women. Now, I find that some of the groups are inflammatory and hitting against women or hitting against men blankly.
Which is not appropriate. That doesn't help anyone.
No, quite. A lot of them are agitating for people to break up, even if it's not necessary sometimes. There's quite often cases where relatively normal couple arguments can be put online, and it's like, oh, just leave him, leave her. Just don't stay with him. That's abusive, that's controlling. And just normal interactions between human beings with connected emotions, and then misconstrued as being abusive and controlling when it's not necessarily the case. And obviously in some cases it is, and we have to acknowledge those cases that there are. However, I think it's important to really step aside and identify the different layers of what is normal relationship stuff, what is abusive stuff, what is controlling stuff, what is manipulative, and what is damaging to the human being. So finding good quality groups online is really important, and not just to go for the biggest, most known ones, because they're quite often the most inflammatory ones, but look for better quality advice and look for better quality support, and you tend to get it. That's kind of where my niche is, really.
That's beautiful. And I really like about what you were sharing about the aspect of being vulnerable right out there to the public. And I have to admit myself, I am guilty of picking and choosing how vulnerable I am to my audience, to the people that follow me. And I realized, no. And that's still something that I'm learning. So when I touch those things, it's like, this is really painful for me. And those are the things that I share. Those are the things that have the most impact on others, because people that might be following you or might be following me or might be following someone else, that think, oh, they've got it all together, they're infallible. But no, we're just as human as anyone else. Our lives are not perfect. We don't have it figured out. We're still learning. we may have figured some things out better at a higher level, but we don't have it all figured out. And then especially with that aspect of the relationships, the support groups, too many people saying, oh no, that's just like, get out of it, get out of there. Relationships aren't meant to have 100% harmony, 100% agreeing all the time. They're two separate beings that have separate thoughts, separate ideas, and that's okay. It's okay to have differences. It's okay to disagree, because you can't always, you don't always have to be on the same page. However, as long as you're in the same book, that's what's important. And at different times, you guys are going to be in different places. And it's about being patient and understanding and going through that and supporting the other person instead of saying, oh, I've outgrown that person. So yeah, that's great recognition. Thank you.
That's really significant. I think in a relationship, you grow together. If you communicate together, you grow together and you stick together. There's a theory, at least. Obviously that doesn't always work. Some people grow at different rates to other people, and that's when you start getting divergences, and people go off in their own ways, and
yes,
different things happen. But communication is the number one skill in any relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship or a professional relationship or a community relationship. Communication is the number one skill to learn and master and develop. And that is an ongoing skill. I know where my weaknesses are in that area, and where my fears are, and where I've communicated in a certain way in the past that hasn't necessarily served me, or has done something that has caused me some trauma in the past because of something I've said, and it's turned into a certain reaction. And I've learned to separate what is my stuff and what belongs to me to what belongs to other people.
Yeah.
We all have our own life experience. I say baggage, but I don't like the word baggage. Life experience and our own
yes,
previous
life experience is a good thing to put. Yeah, call it.
Yeah, no, we are a totality of our life experience so far, and we bring to the table lots of different experiences in that time period, however long we've been alive. And obviously, the more we're alive, the hopefully more experiences that we have, and to be able to separate the things that have caused us trauma in the past to things that happen today that remind us of those traumas that aren't those traumas. And they're the points. They're called triggers, generally speaking, in modern life.
Exactly.
And those trigger things that when someone says or does something that reminds us of something that happened in the past, we are connected right back to probably 20, 30, 40 years ago something happens.
Right.
And in our childhood. And we bring that feeling from 40 years ago, for example, to today, and add it to today's thing, and it compounds onto today's thing when it doesn't belong here.
Right.
The only thing that belongs to today is what happened today, not what happened 40 years ago.
Right, because then we end up making it mean something else when it's just like, no, I'm not that person. That was someone else. That was a different experience. And this has been just such beautiful, valuable stuff that you've brought for us today. And I know there's so much more that you want to share. I'm looking forward to part 2 and having you back on again for our next segment. So thank you so much for joining me today, Andy. I know what you've got forth here to the audience is just, it's gold. It's solid gold. I'm going to be leaving your contact information in the notes here so people know how to reach out to you. Thank you everyone for joining in today. Please stay tuned for part 2. You're not going to want to miss this, because what Andy brings to the table, his experience and how he's helping men in the world is just so powerful and has so much impact. I'm looking forward to seeing you then. Again, thank you so much, Andy. Be blessed, everyone. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thank you.